One of the questions I get asked most frequently on the channel is, how do you read multiple books at one time? And my response is usually, how do you not? Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back today to talk secrets. Yes, the secrets to my reading success. Not really, guys. I was planning on doing like an FAQ, your most frequently asked questions I get. Instead, I decided to tackle probably the second most frequently asked. The first question I always get is, how do you read so fast? And really, guys, I'll be honest, there's no secret to reading fast. Just practice makes perfect, is all I'll say. And, you know, maybe you watch less TV. That's what helps me a lot. But the second most frequently asked question is, how are you able to read multiple books at one time? How are you able to keep them straight? How do you do it? Well, it's something that's very, very simple to me, and I'm going to kind of talk about some of the ways that I go about it. Now, look, guys, besides the name of the video, it's kind of a joke. There is no real big secret here. It's just something that I don't find that big of a deal, and I'm going to talk about why, and why I think that maybe you should give it a try. Maybe it's something that that'll work out for you. Now, first for me, guys, juggling genres. This is a good thing. It's a good thing. You know, don't stick on one genre. You're going to burn yourself out after a while. If you read nothing but fantasy, after a while, you're going to start to be like, tropes are going to annoy you. Something where you're like, I saw that coming a mile away. That stuff's going to start to bother you. So I always like to kind of shake it up a little bit. Keeps things fresh by hopping from one genre to the next. You know, you become frustrated with one storyline. You can kind of jump over, you go from like 14th century England to all of a sudden, boom, you're in outer space, I think that can kind of help you keep things moving along if you're starting to get into a little bit of a rut. So it helps you take a break, and I like that. And I always try to make sure that I balance, my fantasy with a sci-fi or a horror or a thriller or something like that to kind of keep things fresh. So juggling genres helps me keep things from bleeding together, I think, because I feel like the big misnomer here is that I will read like 3 fantasy books at once. Now, it's happened, but I try not to do that. And I think that what you have there is you will start to have things kind of bleeding together. But, if you do, like I said, break it up. You have one fantasy, you have one horror, you have one drama or thriller or science fiction book, you're all of a sudden not going to get that confused with your fantasy book. And you're going to have no problems differentiating those. Next up, it can help if you're a mood reader. Say you're feeling romantic one day. Say you're feeling a little spooky the next day. Not marrying yourself just to one book if you aren't in that mood right now. You're in a down mood. You're depressed. Maybe reading a horror book or the latest grimdark novel, not going to be the best idea for your mood. So I think it's always good to kind of juggle 2 books at least at one time, because you're able to make that quick transition depending on how your mood is for that day. So, some of us get older, we get a little more moody, and it really is vary by the hour, much less the day. So I think that's really good. So if you're feeling down, like I said, it's able to help you kind of, keep something light, airy, fluffy. Get a Dresden Files book, or get you a nice C.S. Lewis novel, something cozy and fun, you're kind of just like, I don't want to be really, really down right now. I don't want to read about like The Girl Next Door when I'm depressed or something. I think that kind of helps it keep that option open. Next up, I think it helps to avoid so many DNFs. Now, if you guys don't know, DNF means you did not finish. Something I've noticed a lot, especially with booktubers, is a number of DNFs, like really, really quick. And I'm guilty of it. I've DNF'd more books this year than I think I have my entire life. And it's just started to get to the point where for me it was like I got all this great stuff that I want to read. Why am I going to spend that time reading something I'm not enjoying? However, I feel like a lot of DNFs are because people are anxious to read whatever's next. Now, look, I'm as guilty as anyone. It's like, while I'm reading something, I'm eyeballing, that it's like that meme where the guy's like turning around looking at the girl. That's me with whatever book series I'm reading next. That's a given. That's going to happen. But I feel like with you doing it this way, staggering some books, things like that, it's going to keep you from feeling like that because you got something else. Or you know what? You can go ahead and start that second series that you're eyeballing. I do recommend that you stay to different genres, but if you're like me and you got a TBR the size of, War and Peace, I think then you'll be fine being able to switch that around. So I think taking a break with a book that you're unsure of really can help instead of just immediately saying DNF, DNF at 20%. And it's just like, give it some time. Maybe take a break, try something else, and then come back to it. And if it's still not clicking, then okay, maybe it's not for you. But I think that a lot of people have a quick trigger finger on the DNF thing now. And it's also, I think sometimes you just need to take a break from being in one world. That's why, like I'm reading Robin Hobb right now, and I said what I was going to do in between each one of those big, massive books was read something that wasn't fantasy in between them. I'm reading Live Ship right now, so in between each one, I read Let the Right One In by John Lindqvist, and now Desperation by Stephen King. That was what helped me make sure I didn't get in any kind of rut. It's just stuck in one world for some time. Now, that isn't a problem for some people. It can be a problem for me. Burnout's very, very real. And if you push it, you end up having like a major fantasy burnout like I did earlier this year, where I just felt like I could not read any fantasy for almost a month. So it will happen, and that will lead to burnout of reading overall, like totally. And you don't want that. We definitely don't want that. Now, for me, guys, with this, it's no different than TV. The question that I get all the time, how can you possibly read so many books at one time, is don't you watch multiple television shows at one time? What's the difference? Both of them have large casts. They have many locations and regions and all these different things going on, different plot lines. You're not like, hey, you know what? I started watching House of Dragon. I can't watch anything else until the season ends. Who does that? No one. You watch House of Dragon, you watch your other show right after it, and you do that weekly. I don't see how it's any different. It's never been any different for me. Like I said, you gotta use the filing cabinets upstairs, like I said, to kind of separate everything. But I've never heard anyone be like, oh, I'm watching this one show right now, I can't watch another one. And that's the same way it is to me with books. Huge cast of characters that you got to remember, a different location, different worlds, and you're able to differentiate those just fine. With that, I don't even think you even got to switch genres. It's just that's how we watch TV, guys. It's not really that big a deal. But, like I said, no one watches House of Dragon and says, I wish I could watch that new episode of Mandalorian, but I can't. I got to wait until 2 months from now when this season of House of the Dragon is done. So, again, I know it's going to vary for everybody, but for me, that's how I approach everything. Now, look, this is not a method for everyone. I can acknowledge that. Some people struggle to focus on just one series, and I understand that. And I understand that not everybody looks at it with the same TV analogy as I do. They feel like if they switch to something else, they're going to forget everything that's going on in the world. Now, I don't want to start the audiobook war. That's not what I'm trying to do. I think for me, maybe it's the fact that I am an eyes-only reader. I don't audio. Maybe that's what helps me be able to differentiate everything, because I can gather more information. For me, when I read with my eyes, I can retain so much more upstairs than if I was just listening to it. You're grabbing every name. You're grabbing every location, every single big moment. You are really just sucking it in. You're not listening to it at a super fast pace, and you're able to actually kind of retain it a little bit more, because the people that I do know who do like that, I read 78 books this month. They do all their audio on like 2.5 speed. And whenever you ask them a question about like, oh, I don't know, I can't remember. And I feel like, again, I'm not trying to say if you audiobook, you're doing it wrong. Do what works for your life. Always. That's the way I'm going to say here. I'm saying for me, it feels like maybe doing this where I just read with my eyes is why I'm able to not worry about reading more than one at a time, because I'm retaining so much more than I would listening to it. Now, again, I know there's other people where their superpower is audiobooks, and I get it. And I'm not trying to throw a broad generalization over that. I got to clarify this, because audiobook people get really mad at me when I say this. I am not saying that you can't do this, listen to 2 audiobooks at one time. Of course you can. Of course you can. I'm saying for me, again, that's how it works, because I do use just eyes. So I retain a ton more with my eyes reading than I would actually just listening to it. So for me, that makes it easier to have those big filing cabinets, like I said, upstairs, to be able to differentiate every fandom that I have, and every, just making sure that I remember who is where, last time I read it, where they were going, their relationships with each other. But that's what works for me, as does why I schedule my TBR the way that I do. When I get a lot of stuff about how can you dare plan out your TBR that far in advance, the reason that I do it, guys, is so I don't have this issue where I've crammed 5 to 6 fantasy books in 1 month. To make sure that I shake it up in case this happens, in case I need to kind of descale a little bit from, this crazy epic fantasy and I just want, I just want a Blake Crouch book or something in between to kind of calm things down. I schedule it to where I was like, okay, I got 2 to 3 fantasy books, and I got a thriller, I got a horror, something like that to make it to where I can flip between them if I need to. So that's why I plan my TBR so far ahead like I do, and I do it on purpose to make sure that I have more than just one genre, because guys, burnout, like I said, is very, very real. Like, for example, I already talked about, right now I'm reading Ship of Destiny by Robin Hobb, the 3rd book in the Live Ship Traders. And I'm also reading Desperation by Stephen King. And I think it's just fine. Every once in a while I'm like, okay, Robin Hobb books I like to read kind of slow. So I'll read about 2 chapters of that, and I'll just dip into Desperation for, 75 pages or so. I think that that's a great method to keep yourself fresh. And if it's something that I just kind of recommend for everyone to try. And that leads me, guys, to try it. You might like it. Now, a lot of people have said this, and now they've never even actually tried to do it themselves. Now, for me, again, this is something that just comes naturally. It's not anything that I really consider like a big secret. Like I said, it's something that's very, very simple. But I think one of the big things I got to kind of recommend is stop worrying about other people reading or listening faster than you. I see so many people in my Discord, so many people on BookTube, where it seems like it's a race. They got to see who can finish it first, who can finish it the fastest, who can get to this amazing number that they picked out on Goodreads the fastest. Guys, it doesn't matter. There's no monetary gain to reading your book beyond faster than anyone else. There's nothing to it. Getting to your goal that you set on Goodreads doesn't change anything. It's just relax. Where's the fire, guys? I'm sure I joke all the time. I'm never going to be able to read all this stuff before I die, but that doesn't mean I want to just rush through it. I don't want to just burn through it. Now, again, I'm not talking about everybody. I know there's some people that's just the pace that they read at, and that's the pace that they're comfortable with. But for me, a lot of the stuff I see is competition based. I can't let this person read it faster than me. I have to be the first person on BookTube to get a video out. And in my opinion, that leads to some lesser reviews that don't really talk about what they read very much, because they just really, I don't want to say skimmed it, but they didn't retain everything because they're trying so fast to be the first to get out there. So here's the thing. Say you scheduled 4 books to read this month, and you read one after the other, and you get all 4 of them done in that month. Now, say if you decide to do 1 book here and 1 book here at the same time, and that takes you half the month, then you do book 3 and book 4 at the same time, and that takes you half the month. What do you know? It took the same amount of time for the month. So again, I don't see what the deal is with being like, oh, I read that whole book faster than anyone else, or I listened to that book faster than anyone else. Again, not talking about everyone. It's just some of the things that I've kind of observed on BookTube. It does seem like a lot of this is competition based, and for me, reading has never been a competition. It's something that I do for entertainment value. It's something I do for fun, and I think being able to stagger books is obviously something that has always worked for me. I would get a little dragged down in a fantasy book. I'm like, let me pick up a Michael Crichton book or something to kind of, like I said, just kind of decompress from that huge epic fantasy world. Get you some standalones, get you some things like that that'll kind of mix in with the big, thick series and things like that. And I think reading them at the same time can really, really help affect your mood, because I've seen so many people, they're like, I want to start this book, but I can't because I've got to finish this one first. It's your life, my guys. You don't have to do that. You can do it any way that works for you. So if you want to say, hey, I don't have to finish that right now, I can go ahead and read this one and come back to it. It's not going anywhere. So again, depends on you. It might not work for everyone, but like I said, since I get asked that question so much, I figured that I would address it here on the channel. That is what works for me. Like I said, treat it like you do your TV shows. You watch multiple of those at one time. I can read multiple books at one time. Now, I try not to start too many series at one time, because I did try that back when I first started this channel, and some of those series I've still never finished, so I try not to do that very much. But I will say, hey, I got a trilogy. I got no problems fitting like 2 of these standalone or different genre books in between those 2 books, and it helps me out a lot. So guys, have you tried this method? Does it work for you? Can you read multiple books at once? Because I've seen some of you guys on Goodreads where you have like 6 or 7 currently reading. So I know that I'm not the only one who can do this. So let me know, guys, if this is a method that works for you, if it's a method you're interested in trying, or if you just think I'm batshit insane, you can say that as well, and I have no problems with it. You might not be wrong. My wife might agree with you. So guys, let me know what you think and drop in the comments, and I will talk to you there.